A woman's sister can be her closest friend.
Sometimes when sisters kill, it's because they're bonded to kill for the same reason.
Or her worst enemy.
Sometimes it's because they hate each other.
A little sister's greed drives her to the unthinkable.
On all four walls of the room and the ceiling, blood everywhere.
Twins discover they are different in life.
She just wanted to live her lifestyle.
And in murder. And the ultimate sibling rivalry.
It was like poking a stick at an angry bull.
These deadly women are bound by blood and divided by the sins of the sister. For some, the sisterly bond is everlasting.
No matter how you feel about her, you're raised with them. They're your blood.
For others, it doesn't exist.
She suffered the ultimate betrayal from her sister.
July 1st, 1997. The war on drugs has reached the suburb of East Oakland, California. Two middle-aged women are taking on the local drug dealers. But soon their surveillance comes to a fiery end.
Definitely something that you don't see that much of, somebody firebombing a house.
The community was outraged that here you have these two white middle-aged women being firebombed by drug dealers.
But the truth is even more outrageous. For 4 years, 52-year-old Stevie Allman shares her home with her little sister, Sarah Mitchell. Blood ties are about all the siblings have in common.
Sarah, get these people out of here now.
Stevie was the exact opposite of Sarah. Stevie was a very hardworking, industrious woman. She was just a very responsible person.
You're my friend. I can't sleep. I've got to go to work in the morning. We're not leaving.
I wouldn't say they were real close because I think Stevie, being such a hardworking woman, didn't really care for Sarah's irresponsibility.
It was almost the good sister versus the bad sister. Stevie had a good job, had a pension from her retirement.
47-year-old Sarah lives rent-free in her sister's house.
I would describe her as kind of an underachiever. She was basically cared for by her sister, Stevie Allman.
Far from being grateful for the free food and board, Sarah steals her sister's money. And then Stevie's identity.
She writes checks in her name, she invades her bank account, she uses her credit cards, and she tells people that she is Stevie. Stevie, who was loved in the community.
Okay, I'll just need to check your ID, Ms. Ullman. Stevie Ullman.
Chances are Sarah hated her sister their whole lives.
The bank alerts Stevie to the fraud. After all the partying, freeloading, and now theft, she's had enough.
All you do is lie and steal.
I needed that money.
It got to the point
That
where
money
Stevie
was
concluded that Look, Sarah, I don't plan on taking care of you for the rest of your life.
Well, I want you out now.
At some point, you're gonna have to be responsible, go out there and get a job, and take care of yourself.
You've stolen your last dollar from me.
I wouldn't be so sure about that.
Sarah has no intention of giving up the good life. She decides her sister has to go and never come back.
When Stevie confronted her, I think that Sarah got angry and decided to kill her.
And Sarah knows who to pin the blame on. The sisters are well-known anti-drug crusaders. They've made enemies of the local dealers by photographing and taping their activities.
She claimed that drug dealers in the area were trying to burn her out, and it was her against them.
The dealers are the obvious culprits if the sisters are attacked. For Sarah to keep her life on Easy Street, it is time for drastic action.
This was the ultimate betrayal. The last person you would expect when you lay your head down at night to go to sleep to come and kill you is your sister. She went into the bedroom and basically beat her to death with a blunt object to the head. Stevie's skull had been crushed.
Sarah killed Stevie while she was in bed asleep because she didn't want a fight on her hands, a fight that she might be injured in or could lose.
But the murder is only part of Sarah's plan.
Her plan was to kill her sister and assume her sister's identity and basically wipe out her bank accounts and take everything that she had.
But before she can take over Stevie's life, there are a few loose ends to clean up. East Oakland, California. July 1st, 1997. 47-year-old Sarah Mitchell bludgeons her older sister Stevie to death for her money and identity. But first, she must dispose of Stevie's body.
A large body, in this case, even an obese one, would be very, very difficult for Sarah to move on her own. Dismember it, she could relocate it piece by piece, which is what she did.
She dismembered her arms and legs, and she dismembered her at the waist. There was blood spatter 360 degrees of the room. On all four walls of the room and the ceiling, blood everywhere.
Killers dismember their victim for various reasons. Sometimes it fulfills some ghoulish need. But sometimes it's for a very practical reason.
Stevie's body had to be chopped up to be placed in freezer bags and put in the freezer.
But there is too much bloody mess to clean up.
The only way to destroy all of this blood evidence was to light that room on fire, which is what she did. We made a decision to burn the whole house up. We believed that she was trying to collect the insurance money for the burned down house to destroy the freezer and the body.
From out of the ashes, Sarah will emerge as Stevie. But there's one thing she doesn't count on.
She did not anticipate getting burned in the fire, which required her to be hospitalized to treat the burn wounds.
While in the hospital, Sarah maintains her story that the local drug dealers have firebombed their home. No one has any reason to doubt her, and there is outrage at the attack. It becomes a front-page story, and the sisters are hailed heroines in the war against drugs.
Seems you struck quite a chord with the community, Miss Allman.
Just call me Stevie.
Notes of sympathy and donations come flooding in.
She did not think that it would become such a big story. Because, you know, when you're trying to get away with murder, you don't want notoriety and attention.
The limelight is the last thing you need when you are not who you say you are.
It's unusual for people to kill someone and assume their identity. The people that pull it off for a while are usually very, very intelligent, and they're highly mobile. I did not just describe Sarah, not at all.
And the new Stevie can't explain where her sister is.
Her responses were kind of cavalier. Oh, Sarah will turn up. She'll call when she wants to. My gut feeling was that this isn't right.
While Sarah is being admired as an anti-drug crusader, investigating officer Greg Hughes looks past the flames. He asks questions around the neighborhood.
This one neighbor happened to see the newsreel footage. She called me and she said that woman that came out of the house that was put in the ambulance was not Stevie. That was Sarah.
Police take a closer look at the burnt-out house and find one thing that has been insulated from the flames: the deep freezer.
What she didn't anticipate was that the freezer being insulated would also insulate the body from the fire. The body was in fairly decent shape, other than the fact that it had been dismembered.
Fingerprints confirms Sarah's true identity. After years of resentment and jealousy, Sarah Mitchell kills for greed. She tries to take everything her sister has and ends up with nothing. In February 2001, Sarah Mitchell is sentenced to life in prison.
A person like that would have to be totally detached from their emotions. And I don't know how somebody gets to that point. I really don't.
I think the most shocking aspect was the fact that Stevie Allman, being the kind of person she was, hardworking, loving, and what she got in return from her sister was being murdered and dismembered.
Sarah is a sociopath to the core. Who could kill someone they're raised with, someone who is good to them? Only a sociopath could do such a thing.
A woman with ambition.
All she needed in life to make her happy was money.
For wealth and independence.
She may have just hated him. She may have just wanted him out of the way.
Can be ruthless.
But I think she wanted the money.
(1992), Huntsville, Alabama. Twins Betty Wilson and Peggy Lowe enjoy each other's company. They share the same gene pool, but are very different individuals.
Peggy Lowe sang in the choir at a big Baptist church. She was a school teacher, and she was held in high regard in the community.
Her sister Betty has a more flashy reputation.
Betty lived what some would call a liberated lifestyle.
It's a bit early to be drinking, isn't it? No.
And partied quite a bit. Did anything she wanted to do.
She collected things like fur coats, diamonds, jewelry. She had a pretty good collection of luxury items.
A nurse, Betty is married to wealthy ophthalmologist Jack Wilson.
She wanted to find a rich doctor. She was infatuated with money and with the status that a doctor could bring her.
Jack is quite a catch.
Look what I just got, Jack. Isn't it gorgeous?
Dr. Wilson was a one-of-a-kind guy. He was a generous man. He had a sign in his office that said, "If you can't pay, see the doc."
Simon. Now then, let's have a look at these eyes of yours.
Dr. Jack Wilson was like one of those doctors that did everything for everyone. He was a great person to be around, to have as a doctor. He was just an outstanding guy.
There's no question he was one of the most beloved men in Huntsville, Alabama.
Well, you've got a slight astigmatism, but I don't think you're gonna need glasses. Thanks, Doc.
But this generous doctor has health problems of his own. He suffers from Crohn's disease, an inflammatory bowel disorder.
Required him to wear a colonoscopy bag, which was very uncomfortable for him and apparently very odious to her.
Oh, honey. Do not disgust me.
Betty has no sympathy. She ridicules him publicly in the most heartless way.
More money.
She would say things like, "You make me sick, and I don't want to see you anymore."
Thank you.
She would do this before the personnel in Jack's office, for example.
She would say things to him like, "You disgust me," which probably in Jack's heart was his biggest fear, that he would ever disgust anyone because of his condition. And she played on that fear.
Repelled by her husband's condition,
Oh, you're too much.
Betty openly takes lovers.
Well, that is for sure.
Betty was notorious.
I'm just gonna reach in here.
She was very freewheeling. She was not abashed about her sexual encounters. Promiscuous would be an understatement.
Why, Jack? Come to get your briefcase. Bye-bye now.
She told Jack and she was never going to have sex with him again.
The one thing Betty likes about Jack is his money.
I think she just wanted to live her lifestyle the way she wanted to live it. And she was quite opposite from her sister in that regard.
Betty's sister, Peggy, lives a very different life. She's known for helping those in need.
Feel like some lunch?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Like out-of-work handyman James White.
He'd been a loser all of his life. He had lost his children. He went from job to job being a workman.
I'm doing pretty tough, actually.
Peggy met James through some work that she had done at her school. She needed bookshelves for her classroom. She learned that James Dennison White was a handyman in the area.
She sends him to her sister Betty, who has a job for him.
James Dennison White is and was a wretched human being.
I have something I think you'll be very interested in.
Hiring James White will propel the twins into a real-life tragedy the town will never forget.
He was a drug addict, he was a liar, he was a cheater, he was a deserter, he was a whole lot of bad things.
Soon, James adds one more thing to the list. Killer. Huntsville, Alabama, 1992. Betty Wilson likes a good time. She's bored with her 14-year marriage to ailing husband, Jack.
I think Betty married Jack Wilson for two reasons. Number one, he was an ophthalmologist, which probably meant he made a lot more money than most doctors do. And secondly, he was chronically ill with a serious, debilitating disease. She thought he would die.
In May 1992, Betty and Jack's marriage comes to an abrupt end.
James White was waiting for him inside.
What the? What are you doing?
They scuffled. James White picked up this baseball bat and meticulously beat Jack to death with it. It was a brutal murder.
Get out of my house!
Jack is left to die.
They found him beaten severely and stabbed at least twice.
It looks like a burglary gone wrong. Until the police receive a phone call from James White's former girlfriend.
The police zeroed in on James pretty quickly. They got a tip from an informant who said that she was a former girlfriend of James White and that he had talked to her in a drunken stupor about being hired to kill someone in Huntsville.
After he was captured, he told a series of stories.
James confesses, but insists he is a contract killer. And his alleged clients will stun officials.
He got around to admitting that he had been hired to commit the murder by the twin sisters.
James says his instructions come not only from Betty, but her twin sister, Peggy.
Said that Betty Wilson and Peggy Lowe hired him to go and kill Dr. Jack Wilson. And they were going to pay him $5,000.
Betty's disdain for her husband is well known.
Betty Wilson was viewed as a social climber, having affairs while married to this great Dr. Jack Wilson, and all of the great things that he did.
Betty's reputation at the time of the murder would have been something else. It would have been a little more sinister. She had a reputation of being unfaithful to her husband and was held in low regard.
But the town finds it impossible to accept Peggy as a suspect.
Well, I think there were probably opposite extremes. Peggy Lowe was held, I guess, in high regard.
In Vincent, Alabama, Peggy Lowe was loved. They loved her. Everyone loved her.
There is no forensic evidence implicating either twin. But James's testimony and a library book checked out by Betty Wilson are enough for arrests.
They were connected by a library book, which was checked out from the Huntsville library.
Ow, you are hurting me!
Where Betty had actually transferred some money to him, and he still had the book in his car at the time he was arrested.
The verdict is something only a jury can decide. James White is the star witness.
He worked out a deal where he would get a reduced sentence in return for testifying against the two women.
In court, as in life, the sisters are opposites.
Peggy was acquitted by the jury in her case.
There's absolutely no way she could have done any of this.
While Peggy is found innocent, Betty is found guilty of murder. She is sentenced to life in prison without parole.
The facts that we brought together painted the picture of a vile and contemptuous woman who had everything but wanted more.
Betty denies ever meeting James White, and to this day proclaims her innocence. Peggy supports her sister's claims.
Betty Wilson has no empathy for other people. She doesn't feel bad about hurting other people. It's hard for me as a registered nurse to say that about another registered nurse. But I do believe this to be true. Betty Wilson was a dangerous woman, and she still is. She's right where she needs to be for the rest of her life.
Give me the remote. My favorite show's on.
There is nothing unusual about sisters fighting, especially during adolescence. But while most grow out of it,
her moods were becoming unmanageable and her aggression was rising.
some don't get the chance.
It's like a gun being cocked all the time, and finally it goes off. There's no stopping what comes out the barrel.
Australia, 2004. In the Sydney suburb of Strathfield, Kathleen and Susan Worrell are typical teenage sisters.
So I don't have a big holiday. Oh, aren't you just so beautiful?
There was sibling rivalry, but nothing more than you expect in an ordinary family.
Put your heads close together, please, girls.
They have a loving relationship and come from a good home.
Kathleen had gone to one of the best private schools in Sydney, along with Susan, and she'd done quite well. She had a large group of friends. They all said that she was a lovely person.
Oh, you're so gorgeous, both of you. I'm so blessed to have two gorgeous twins like you two.
She described her sister and her as two halves of the one whole, and Susan had reciprocated that love.
One more corner, put her head closer.
But as the girls reach puberty, one thing sets them apart.
Kathleen suffered from a hormonal disorder wherein she had way too much testosterone and exhibited a lot of male features.
Kathleen is born with congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or CAH. But when she reaches puberty, the symptoms become obvious.
This would be a terrible thing for a young girl. She would have facial hair, a deep voice. She wouldn't look like a girl. She's going to look like a boy.
Forensic pathologist Janice Amatuzio says the side effects of this condition are especially challenging for a young woman.
When a female infant is born with this particular enzyme deficiency, what we tend to see is they have all of the developmental factors that we see in normal male development. As a result, this individual can be thought to be tall as a child, more muscular, have a deeper voice, grow facial hair, and have excess strength. From the time of birth, once this is discovered, that individual is placed on steroids for the rest of their lives.
But Kathleen's medication has unwanted side effects for a teenage girl. Weight gain.
You ready to go to the movies? I'm not going. I can't go out. Look at me. Look at
When
me.
she was on the medication she was supposed to be, it caused her to gain excessive weight. Teenage girls don't like being overweight. Kathleen hated it.
I'm ready. Let's go.
The side effects of Kathleen's medication were quite awful and she found very difficult to deal with.
This medication is ruining my life.
The pressure gets to Kathleen. She is unhappy and desperate to control her weight.
Hello, Kathleen. Come in. How are things going? Life's too hard. I feel so fat. I want to come off the medication.
I think in the state that Kathleen was in, she perhaps didn't understand the side effects of not taking her medication.
I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Look at me. How am I ever going to get a screw looking like this? No one's going to want to touch me.
Just settle down, Kathleen. Have you already come off your medication?
You don't understand. No one understands.
I'm trying to understand.
When somebody has suddenly stopped taking steroids that they've been taking for their whole life, small things can irritate them and small things can set them off.
Kathleen secretly stops taking her medication.
Kathleen, dinner's almost ready. Don't go eating snacks now.
Get off my back. Why are you always going on at me?
The level of testosterone in Kathleen's blood rose and rose and rose to a dangerous level, to a point where it was 4 times as high as it should have been for a woman her age.
What's wrong? You are taking your pills, aren't you?
Stop telling me what to do. Everyone thinks they can tell me what to do. I've had it.
Kathleen feels powerful.
Testosterone is the aggression hormone.
After she stopped taking the medication, she was training very obsessively. She was very pleased with herself. I think she described herself as being, like a gladiator, very strong.
Psychiatrist Olav Nielsen discovered how the process started to affect Kathleen's state of mind.
Well, it's a little bit similar to people who are doing bodybuilding, taking very high doses of steroids. And the higher the dose, the greater the effect is. Increased aggression, increased confidence, assertiveness. And there's some studies to show an increased risk of mania, the syndrome of abnormally elevated mood.
Unknown to the Worrells, Kathleen is losing control.
Give me the remote. Favorite show's on. Wait, I'll watch this one. You're not even watching it. You're too busy stuffing your face. Give me it.
When someone is in the grip of a manic episode, they don't censor themselves. Susan, unfortunately, had no idea what she was dealing with. How truly dangerous Kathleen had become. Kathleen was a ticking time bomb.
In Sydney, Australia, in 2008. 20-year-old Kathleen Worrell is aggravated.
Kathleen's moods were becoming unmanageable, and her aggression was rising.
She needs medication to control her hormone levels, but she's not taking it.
Kathleen's aggression levels were so high, one psychiatrist described it as being an athlete on anabolic steroids.
With her mind raging, Kathleen is preparing.
This is a dangerous state of mind for a man or a woman to be in.
She wants to know the quickest way to kill her 18-year-old sister, Susan.
There had been a lot of quarrels between the sisters.
You're not allowed to touch my things.
Fights were sort of symptomatic of what was happening to Kathleen at that time.
Kathleen is fighting for control of her mind. She is manic.
A manic state must have emerged over several months with the manipulation of medication and the very high or large fluctuations in her testosterone level.
Aware of losing control, she reaches out for help. She sends a message to a friend.
It was along the lines of, I intend to murder my sister if I can't be persuaded otherwise.
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
It was a cry for help, but I don't think it was responded to as you might if you actually believed that she was going to do it.
Her friend emailed back to her to not do that, and so Kathleen didn't.
But come morning, Kathleen has second thoughts. With the sisters alone in the house, Kathleen finds the perfect opportunity.
It appears to me that intellectually, Kathleen did not want to kill her sister, but emotionally, she felt overpowered to do so. As she entered her sister's room, she looked at her, decided not to do it. She closed the door and backed out yet again.
Kathleen's self-control is on a knife's edge. It doesn't take much to slip.
Incorrect password.
Susan had changed the password for the computer, so Kathleen couldn't use the internet.
Being mean to Kathleen in Kathleen's state of mind, it was like poking a stick at an angry bull.
Kathleen finally snaps.
Whatever was in her path, if she was angry, would have been attacked.
With abnormally high levels of testosterone, Kathleen easily overpowers her petite sister.
She has all of this muscular development, all of this strength that normally women don't have, so she could do a lot of damage.
Susan dies within 30 seconds of being attacked. She is stabbed 50 times. Immediately after the murder, Kathleen calls emergency services.
Please. I killed my sister.
Pretty clear that her reasoning was quite affected. I mean, she didn't think for 1 minute about what might happen to her after this occurred.
Police!
Are you armed? No.
She didn't even consider about being taken to prison. She didn't consider that her parents might be upset.
Kathleen is charged with murder. She receives a psychiatric assessment.
She's interviewed by a total of 5 mental health experts, and I think the consensus view was that her ability to judge right from wrong and her ability to control her actions were substantially impaired.
The charge is reduced to manslaughter. She is sentenced to 6 years in prison.
After a certain amount of time on medication to control it, she was able to calm down and look back and reflect on what she had done.
The most shocking part about this was that it was a sister killing her own sister. They hadn't necessarily been unloving sisters. In fact, it had been quite the opposite.
What's left of the distraught Worrell family has one more tragedy to face. 2 months after her conviction, Kathleen is found dead of natural causes in her cell. She was 22.
Ultimately, Susan's parents are now without any children. And they lost both their daughters through something hideously tragic.
These deadly women cut their blood ties forever. Greed drove Sarah Mitchell to destroy her own sister. Betty Wilson couldn't find the same happiness as her twin, Peggy, and mental illness let Kathleen Worrell destroy her only sister. These women shared a common bond of sibling love and rivalry. All were destroyed by the sins of the sister.